Good evening, everyone. This is the March 16, 2021 regular meeting of the Harbor Management Commission. I'm Kim Taylor, the chair, and in attendance we have Jack Hirschler, Ted Schwartzman, Eric Sunman, myself. In addition, we have the Harbor Master, Ed Billings, Jeff Stedman, and Betty Gabriel, our recording secretary, is on the way.
I am here, Kim.
Great, Betty. Okay, so this meeting is called to order, and our first order of business is to approve the January 19 minutes from the our meeting of January 19, 2021. Can I have a motion to accept them as presented?
Kim, this is Ted. I will make a motion to accept the minutes from January as they stand.
Thank you, Ted. Can I have a second?
I'll second them. This is Eric.
Eric, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, the February minutes, I understand...
Kim, this is Doug Metchik. I've joined the call.
Oh, great, Doug. Welcome. The February minutes, we have an issue, Ted. Ted and Jack brought it to my attention. Ted, you had the solution for the February minutes?
Yes. Hold on one second. I'm just pulling up what I sent to Betty.
Okay.
In the February 16th minutes, basically on page number 2 of the Harbor Master's report, the very bottom of that, there was a sentence that spoke about what the Harbor Management Commission approved in terms of funding for reconditioning the boat donation from Pequot Yacht Club. And I thought that wasn't worded quite correctly.
Okay.
So the suggestion that I made, and I will just read this sentence, and we did send this to Betty.
I did receive it, Ted. I just didn't have time.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I did receive it. I just didn't have time to redistribute it to everyone.
Oh,
okay?
That's fine. But I just want to give the commissioners a flavor for the revised sentence. So the revised sentence will say, following discussion, Ted Schwartzman moved and Harry French seconded to approve expenses up to $7,500 to equip, repurpose the donated vessel by the Pequot Yacht Club to the Harbor Management Commission, and a contingency of up to $2,500, with the funds to be expended from the Southport Harbor account and expenditures to be pre-approved by the HMC chair. So that was a corrected version. Previously, it read that the $2,500 contingency would be each year or annual, and we corrected that to show that it was just one time.
So the words "together with an annual" disappear from that.
Together with an annual disappears, and maintenance expense disappears.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, commissioners, with those two changes, with the language "together with an annual" and maintenance expense disappearing from the Harbor Master's report on page 2 of the minutes, can I have a motion to accept them as corrected?
This is Jack. I would make that motion.
Thanks, Jack. Moved, and a second.
This is Eric. I'll second it.
Thanks, Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed? Very good. Okay.
Kim, this is Libby Trichler. I am on the call.
Well, Libby, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So moving forward, our first order of business is the chairman's report. We participated in a Zoom meeting organized by Mill River Wetlands. Jeff Stedman was also there to discuss the Aquarian application to divert the additional 7 million gallons of water from the Mill River and the Hemlock Reservoir system, and to discuss strategies and basically better understand how it is that these kinds of applications work and what the impact of that request might be. On the 3rd of March, I sent an email to Fairfield's Representative Jennifer Leeper outlining our concerns related to the Cohen v. Deep decision and the Aquarian application, and just to inform her of our concerns in related to both areas. On the 5th of March, we received a letter from John Casey, who represents Mr. Owens in his application for a mooring permit as a littoral property owner. That letter is attached to the agenda under new business, and we can discuss that when we get there. He is requesting that the Commission review the Harbor Master's decision to place Mr. Owens on the waiting list. And I also forwarded that letter to Jim Baldwin, the town attorney. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, I received an email response from our Jennifer Leeper saying that she was very pleased to report that she had chatted with some of her colleagues in Hartford who represent Greenwich and other areas, and that she would be happy to help with whatever effort the Harbor Commissions generally, as a group, decide to move forward with in Hartford. So that's the correspondence and the activity from where I'm sitting. Ed Billings, Harbor Master, how about a report from you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Hope everyone's doing well. My report will be brief today. That's the time of the year is for online moorings and getting all moorings, if there's any issues, getting them resolved, getting stickers out. I have stickers in hand. They will be processed and distributed on or before the 1st of April. I need to get together with Mr. Stedman, RE, an accompanying letter to go with them. I reached out over the past couple of weeks to everyone who is on the renewal / under review heading, and that includes people who had moorings this past year, but through one reason or another have not fully complied with submitting their application for 2021. There was approximately 10 people. I had an excellent response, I must say. Many of them reached out to me immediately, furnished documentation, and there's still a couple of issues with a few people, but I was very pleased with that result. I still have a couple of moorings that are in question as to whether or not the applicant from last year is returning this year. That still needs to be resolved in writing to me from each individual, and I'm looking forward to wrapping that up in the next week, I hope. What else? I have regarding the HMC patrol vessel, I've reached out to Mr. Foley regarding the items that need to be accomplished on the boat prior to us really using it, and waiting for him to get back in touch so we can get any issues ironed out. I believe that is it, other than, the normal stuff, many emails to various people trying to resolve issues. Any questions?
Ed, this is Kim.
Yes.
generally, when in the past, I believe it's been the practice to send out the annual report along with the mooring stickers. Is that?
Yes, that was done last year. Yes.
Right, and are we planning on doing that at all, or?
Well, we discussed it at the mooring meeting that we would send a PDF linking that report to it, and make a hard copy for distribution to a number of town officials and anyone else who requested it in writing.
Okay, good. Any questions for the Harbor Master? Okay, no questions. We can move along to old business, the Lower Wharf project. Mr. Stedman.
Oh, sorry, I was muted, I guess. We've scheduled a remote meeting for Thursday at 10:30 with the DEP people who will be reviewing the new permit application, and also with Mr. Sternberg from RACE, so that we can make sure that we have a good understanding of the information that will be required to not just renew this permit application, but also but to apply for a new application. So there are a number of issues that we've been discussing that affect, of course, the cost of doing this, including requirements for additional sediment sampling and other studies that we did for the original application. So we thought the best way to make sure we have an understanding and also to enable RACE to prepare a reasonable and cost estimate that we can be confident with. So we don't have that cost. We talked about getting a cost estimate for this month's meeting, but we felt it was important to not just for RACE to do that on their own, but for us to have the input from DEEP. So that's what it would be, as I said, several of us on Thursday morning to discuss this.
Okay, so we'll have a report for the April 20 at the April 20 meeting.
Yes, and the anticipation would be a cost estimate that we can have confidence in for professional services needed to apply for a new permit.
Okay, excellent. Any questions for Jeff? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This is Eric.
Go,
you, Madam Chairwoman, to Mr. Stedman. How has there been any measurements of at low tide the sandbar sticking out into the harbor? Any kind of like fresh measurements, because it does seem like it's gotten larger since like last season.
Right. Eric, is the next report, Eric. That's a different that's the federal project.
Gotcha. Okay.
What I just mentioned was the Lower Wharf project between the launching ramp and the Lower Wharf, which would be the town project. What you're referring to is the other main project, the federal project.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions about the Lower Wharf, about that for Jeff? Okay. Sand management. Mark Foster is not here this evening. So, Jeff, any?
Well, this gets into Eric's question, and from our questionnaire, we know that this is, in the public's view, this is perhaps the most important project that we're pursuing. And a week before last Friday, my friend Steve Ferguson, who was president or chairman of the community sailing program, he also is a manager of the Westchester County Airport. So he allows me to fly around with him when he takes up a plane to test. So we've got some very good aerial images of the sandbar at low tide. and to, well, we should probably share those. I sent them to the Corps of Engineers and to Mark and Kim, but should probably share them with all the commission members. But to answer Eric's question, I forget when the most recent survey was done. Maybe if Mr. Santa is on the line, he would recall that. I can check easily enough. But the most recent survey is what the Corps has used. They did it's within the last 2 years. They've used that to plan their proposed channel dredging project, and at least for the purpose of the conceptual plan to get approval from DEEP about. I'm assuming that they would do another survey right. Well, they would have to before the project, but I can get that actually if during I can look in my computer and find that date, Eric. But it's relatively recent. But that's what we're going by now. But I mean, you don't need a survey to look at the. Of course, you do it for the quantities, but to look at the sandbar at low tide from directly above, you can see that it's more than halfway across the width of the waterway there, and it's just an obvious navigation issue. But I'll get that date for you. I just.
Eric, where were you when you made that observation?
Actually, yesterday, low tide yesterday morning, I was at Yacht Yard looking out, and I actually took a photo. And it was, to me, it was like, here I am picturing, boat traffic trying to navigate through this, and it was really kind of concerning because it seems like it's just getting bigger. And I remember back, I believe it was in 2014. Correct me if I'm wrong. When it was when that sand bank was dug out and made a little wider. Am I right on that?
Yes.
And since then it has just I can just imagine two sailboats meeting each other this summer.
At low tide.
At low tide. I mean, I don't know. And then also at high tide, you've got to kind of almost mark where the drop starts because, you're going to have like some ideals running aground, avoiding incoming vessels, and, it's just getting tighter. I mean, in my visual, the way it looks now, it just looks to me like this really needs to get out of here because it's now getting super tight. And I could just imagine, a 40-foot, two 40-foot boats coming, and then all of a sudden you've got a fleet of ideals going out on a Wednesday night, and like, where's everybody going to go? And the closer you get to the sandbar, it's you almost need some kind of marking somehow. Right. I don't know.
The most recent survey was by the Corps of Engineers in 2020, and I've got to enlarge the drawing on my computer to read the actual date of the survey. So it was last year that they did the survey.
But I mean, I'm sure it's grown since, obviously.
Yes.
And to me, it's like I'm just trying to envision, how many boats can you get in that neck at this point right now? And, on a busy, and then you've got kayakers, and you've got all sorts of you've got so much going on there that it's very tight right now. And I mean, to me, yesterday was like, I looked at it and it kind of hit me. I was like, wow, that is really, and then you take a look at how far away the stone wall is, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really sticking out right now, right there. Wow. So I could forward you, Madam Chairwoman, the photo.
Why don't you, if you have a picture, and then Jeff, why don't we, I will send to the commissioners the aerials that you took, and I'll include Eric's picture, and so everybody can see.
And I mean, I don't know if there's a recommendation that we can make to do something for public safety? Is there something necessary there to alert, transits coming in or other vessels to understand, this is really, do we need some markers over there? What do we need to do? Because I think that it's not going to be resolved anytime soon, but I could just envision this traffic, especially this summer, down there. It's going to be really tight.
And that's why we've trying to get this meeting with the Corps and the DEP on the site. And I just see that the survey, the most recent survey, Eric, was February of 2020 by the Corps of Engineers. Yeah. So a little over a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in any case, I think we should be concerned about just the public safety factor right now of that specific area. Be aware of it. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't know, not only be aware of it, but maybe do we need to be proactive about it in the meantime, some way? Just throwing it out there for discussion. That's all.
Yeah, I know we also have made the argument many times that the actual navigable width of the channel doesn't meet the Corps of Engineers, and I sound like an engineer and I'm not, but that doesn't meet the Corps of Engineers guidelines for channel width to allow two boats to pass. But we have certainly all these arguments, and now we need to. We're doing the best we can to move this forward.
Have we heard, Jeff, from the Corps about their travel plans?
No, we remember I said that we were hoping that we would have that meeting in March, right. And apparently people are not available. I've sent another email to the Corps asking that they were going to provide dates that they would be transferred to the DEP to see which are convenient to them. But to answer your question, we haven't resolved the meeting date yet, and that's a priority to do.
Yeah.
But it's not for lack of trying. There are other projects that the Corps said that they're working on that are underway in this dredging season in other states, and that's why they haven't given this the attention, I guess, that we think it deserves. But
we think it deserves. We're not a priority yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, let me ask you a question on that. Is there a way to change the priority based on what Eric pointed out, which is public safety concerns?
Well,
could we potentially get this project on a different track than we're on now?
I know you don't want to hear me say this all the time, but we've been making these arguments since 1990. About public safety and the argument that it's not safe for two boats to pass, and it's whether there's an emergency way. But we've tried that, Ted, and we can keep. After this meeting, we'll relay this discussion again to the Corps, and I'll send another email after this meeting with reference to what Eric has said and the concern about safety as the boating season is approaching, and the need to perhaps have some special notices issued or new hazard markers or something. I'll use this discussion I'll transmit this discussion to the Corps and to DEP to try to urge this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's.
In terms of jurisdiction, I mean, who would be who if we wanted sort of the danger to be marked? I mean, I know it's the Army Corps is the primary owner, if you will, of that area. But is there anybody else? Is there?
Again, I don't know. Mr. Engborg and Mr. Santa may be on the line, but I don't know enough about the Coast Guard authorities and whether it would require a private aid to navigation, and we'd have to get a permit for that through DEEP, but we can pursue all that too. I don't know the answers myself precisely about the regulations, but to get a private aid to navigation, which would describe what the town would do.
Right.
Since it's not a federal aid, that we need to get the proper permission from DEEP to do that. I'll bring that all up in an email to the Corps and to DEP tonight.
Okay, that would be great. That would be great and pretty important at this point. Any other questions for Jeff of sand management? Okay.
I know it sounds like you've been spending so much time and it's taken so long, and why can't we do anything here? And we had the funds from the federal government in 2004 to restore the full width of the channel, and it was the DEEP's decision that we could not do that because of the plants that were growing on the sandbar, and because the sandbar itself was considered a resource. So it sounds funny that we've been fighting on this, or not fighting, but trying to pursue it for 30 years.
So did those funds go somewhere else? Is DEEP DEEP wouldn't be holding them in trust for us by any chance?
Oh no. The funds in 2004 came from the federal government, and those were monies. As you know, the federal government is not going to provide funds now for that sort of thing. It doesn't meet the Corps' cost-benefit analysis. But back then, there was, as you know, the earmark program, where individual projects were added to the larger Corps' funding bill. So we were able to get money allocated for this project from the federal government. But DEEP controlled, what could be done. So the only work that could be done was we couldn't restore the whole width of the channel with it. Mm-hmm. So I guess the monies went back to the federal government, or they just weren't used. I don't know how much additional funds were not, or how much funds were not used, but no, it's just a long, complex process.
Long saga. Well, we'll keep slugging away at it. I mean, we don't have any other choice. But that would be great if you could get that email.
I'll do that. I'll do that tonight.
Maybe move the needle just a little bit. Any other questions for Jeff and sand management? Okay, Jack, mooring committee.
Am I off of mute? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. The mooring committee did meet on March 11th, as Ed alluded to in his report to us, to sort of augment some of the things that Ed had talked about in his report. He did mention when we met on the 11th that there were then 2 mooring locations that were definitely available for reassignment for the coming season, and as he mentioned tonight, possibly 1 or 2 others, so perhaps as many as 4, as few as 2 to be reassigned. As Ed discussed, we had a conversation about the patrol boat acquisition and the next steps for us with regard to that. Kim, you're in possession of the documentation that we need for the town to get the town's approval to acquire the boat, and we are just waiting for a couple of bits of information from the town purchasing manager, as Ed alluded to, and also from the risk manager relative to how insurance is to be treated. And Jeff had agreed that he would get us a quote from an insurance agent to give us a number we can use for planning purposes, pending guidance from the town risk manager about whether the town policy will cover this boat as well. We did discuss the preparation for the annual report, Kim, that you just discussed a few minutes ago, to go out. Historically, with the mailing of the stickers, and as Ed indicated, this time our plan is to provide a link for folks to read the report and to make a few hard copies for key departments in the town to have available for people who want a hard copy. And we had a brief discussion about the fact that Mr. Casey's letter had been received and that we would be discussing it at today's meeting. That's the some of what was discussed at the March 11th Mooring Committee meeting, and that meeting is posted by the town clerk on the Town of Fairfield website. That's my report.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions about the Mooring Committee? Mooring Committee meeting? Commissioners? Okay. If there are no questions,
Kim, it's Betty.
Yes, go ahead, Betty.
If you want to send me the annual report, I can make it. I can put it on the HMC website, and the link can be sent to Ed for distribution.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Jeff, you were in possession of the annual report?
Well, I will be when we got to finish it. So,
okay.
We always had sent that out at the beginning of April. So if you just
right.
give me a week and I'll put that.
When you're ready, I can upload it.
Okay.
Yeah, not intending to hurry you, just making sure that everybody knows who's on first here. Okay, that would be great, Betty. Any other questions?
No.
Any other questions? The Mooring Committee. Harbor management.
If I might interrupt
yes,
for 1 second, this is
Yep.
Ed Billings again.
Yep.
Jeff, again, not to reiterate that there's no rush on this. However, I have had several requests. Where's my mooring sticker? I haven't received it as of yet. So just just to add a little levity, that's all.
Everybody wants winter to be over.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Mooring Committee. About the Mooring Committee. Okay. Plan update. Jeff is preparing a summary report of our survey, and when that's available, we will send it to commissioners, post it on our website, and let the folks in the organizations who mobilize their members to respond to the survey in the first place know that it's available. So that's in the works, and we're almost ready to go with that summary report of the survey. We will also make available, as I said at the last meeting, the complete survey, which will include all the individual comments in the various places where the survey asked for comments. In addition, we will begin working on looking at the policies, updating the policies portion of the plan, and we've just begun to. In fact, Jeff is going to get that out to us shortly as well, and that will be kind of our next mission in the effort to actually update the plan. Any questions? Okay, hopefully you will have that summary, the link to the summary survey shortly. Okay. Proposed changes to the mooring rules. Jack?
You'll recall, Commissioners, that our last detailed discussion around the pending proposed rules and procedures for mooring in the harbor was at our December monthly meeting of the Commission, and we are still sort of collecting people's input relative to those proposed changes, and we'll want to undertake a detailed discussion of them at an upcoming meeting. Since our last meeting in February, I've received 2 comments from 2 different members of the public about our pending rule changes, and I thought they were both good and interesting recommendations and wanted to share them tonight with the commissioners to get your reaction to them as well. The first one was an email from a member of the public who was noting that the state of Connecticut requires boaters to have a safe boating certificate, and is suggesting in his note that we should require or consider requiring the harbor master to obtain evidence that people who are receiving permits in Southport Harbor have the required safe boating certificate. This would be a one-and-done submission because the state of Connecticut does not require a renewal when somebody has one, but it is, I think, a reasonable thing for us to request since it's required for all boaters in the state. And the person who suggested this wrote that the safe boating certificate is the first document that the police in the state of Connecticut would ask for if they stop a vessel. So I think makes a strong case for why we should consider having this document image stored in our online mooring system for anybody who has a mooring in the harbor. Any reaction to the first idea?
Commissioners, any questions, any thoughts?
Okay. The second suggestion that we consider including in our updated rules came from a different person who suggested that folks who, under our rules, who have docked vessels, these are at private docks or they may be at the Pequot Yacht Club slips, they're required to provide information about the vessel for safety reasons so that the harbor master, in case of an emergency, knows how to reach the person. They know what vessel goes with each person. And those records are kept in the online mooring system because the harbor master is required to maintain those records under our rules. The person's recommendation was that as we are recommending in our updated rules that people on the waiting list should pay a small fee, perhaps $10 a year, to renew their waiting list positions, that the people who have docked vessels in the harbor are benefiting from the work of the harbor master and the commission and benefit from the dredging projects when they're completed and all the other work of the commission. And it would be reasonable for people who are obligated to complete those reports in the online mooring system to also be charged a small fee, probably like the $10 a year fee that's charged to the people on the waiting list. By the way, the online mooring system charges us for those docked vessel reports in that system just like they do for a mooring application or a waiting list application. So that would be yet another argument in fairness for the docked vessel people to at least cover the costs of their record in the online mooring system every year. So those are the two recommendations from two different members of the public that I've received in the last month. I don't know if there's any comments on either of them.
Commissioners, any thoughts? Okay, no thoughts. Jack, is the Rules Committee planning on getting together again to make sure we know where we are, and perhaps draft up or consider either of these two suggestions?
I'd be happy to schedule that if the Commission would like me to do that.
Well, I think we've done a significant amount of work, and it would be appropriate to make sure that the draft of the rules that we have reflects the comments that we gathered at the public hearing and reflects the Commissioner's thoughts about those comments, and that we perhaps might have an opportunity to bring the rules proposal back in front of the Commission sometime in the next couple of months. The new rules wouldn't obviously not go into effect until next year, the 2022 boating season, but if we are to change them, we would have to get some assistance in legislation from the RTM, and they have certain posting and time requirements. So it could turn out to be, even if we act fairly soon. It could turn out to be into the fall before we have any. We have new rules to be effective in 2022. So, unless the commissioners have other ideas, I think it would be appropriate to begin to move a little bit forward on this project. Commissioners, any ideas? Any thoughts?
Kim, this is Ted.
Yes, Ted?
I would agree with everything you just said,
okay.
And I would probably suggest that we probably try to address this either in the April or May meeting.
Okay.
Because my hope would be that we have as many commissioners at that meeting as possible, since it's such an important topic and subject both for the Commission and the Harbor. And I think once you get to the summer months of June, July, and August, it gets more and more difficult to get the whole group of commissioners together. People tend to be more active, vacation plans, and hopefully we're in a somewhat post-COVID environment, and people are starting to do things again.
Right.
So anyway, the long and the short of it is I think if we could do something the next 2 months, it probably means that we'd have a greater representation of the commissioners participating in whatever the final discussion and vote is on this topic.
Okay. Other commissioners, thoughts? Moving forward with the rules?
Just so I'm clear, Ted, what you were talking about is the regular monthly Harbor Management Commission meeting. Kim, you were, I thought, talking about the subcommittee that's working on rules and procedures. Am I misunderstanding?
No, I think you're right. Ted is suggesting that the full commission, I believe, he's suggesting full commission revisit the draft of the rules and procedures. I guess what I'm saying is I am not sure where we left, what the condition of the existing draft is, and does it reflect the comments that the commissioners had at the public hearing, number one, and number two, if either of these ideas are worthy of further discussion, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary from the commissioners, that maybe it would be appropriate for the subcommittee or the rules committee to sit down and to take a look at them and discuss them and see what implications, if any, those suggestions might have for the larger document.
I should get that scheduled soon, taking into consideration Ted's suggestion that we try to discuss this in April or May.
Yeah.
On the full commission. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Commissioners, any thoughts about that plan? Any concerns? Any questions? Okay. Ted, the budget request.
Okay. We met with the Board of Finance last Thursday on March 11th to review our budget request. It was a very quick meeting with the Board of Finance. We only met for about 3 minutes or so because the main message was that the budget that we're requesting, around $23,000 for the upcoming fiscal year, is exactly the same as the budget that we have this year. I also mentioned to the Board of Finance that we do expect to spend all of that appropriation this year, this fiscal year, and we would expect to expend that appropriation next fiscal year as well. The other thing that I did was explain to the Board of Finance that 85% of our budget really entails the fees and professional services line of our budget, and explain that that represents both a stipend to the harbor master as well as fees for our outside consultant, who lends a level of expertise to the Harbor Management Commission that we would not have without his input. So that was really the 3 minutes worth of our presentation to the board. They did not ask any questions, and I suspect that was because the meeting was already 3 hours in and still had a couple hours to go, and that we didn't have a increase that we were requesting. And And that was really it. If anyone wants to see the budget message that we presented as well as the budget, it's on pages 94 and 95 of the town's proposed budget for fiscal year 22. And that's on the town's website under the Department of Finance heading if you go there. And Kim, that's my report unless there's any questions.
Ted, thank you so much for participating in that proceeding and for giving up 3 hours. And I am very grateful that you were able to represent us there and took the time from a Thursday evening to do so. Any questions for Ted? Any questions about our budget? Okay. Moving right along then. Thanks again, Ted. The new business.
You're welcome, Kim.
New business. Jeff, the public information meeting, the ongoing proceedings with deep consideration of Aquarian's request to divert all that water.
Yes. Yeah, that's quite interesting. So there was a status conference on March 11th that I didn't participate. I listened, and it was to set the ground rules and the dates for the public hearing. And the public informational hearing will be on May 4th at 3 p.m. And these are these Zoom meeting things. And then afterwards, there are some other meetings before and after as part of the process. But the hearing to receive public comments is going to be on May 4th. Now, as you may know, the Conservation Commission, at the request of the Conservation Commission, the town filed for intervener status in the public hearing. And I don't understand all of this, but it gives the town certain legal rights in the hearing, including a right to appeal the decision. Now, interestingly, that as part of the budget proposal, one of the conservation staff people who had been involved with this is no longer with the town, and so at the status conference, there were two people representing the town, two attorneys representing the town, and they talked about moving, how the town would provide information as part of this. And I think that they said that consultants would assist with the Conservation Department with the review of the Aquarian proposal. Now, interestingly, there were also at this meeting that I listened to, there were representatives of the Mill River Wetland Committee, the Lake Hills Association, and the Fair Plan Group, all of which or whom have interests in how water is managed, and so whether any of those groups will also file to be an intervener in the process is not known at this time. There will also be a site visit on April 22nd for the hearing officer to familiarize herself with the conditions in the potentially affected areas. And they asked how many people thought they might attend the site visit, and I said I thought that at least someone representing the Harbor Commission would want to attend. And so that's still unknown what areas would be viewed, and where people would park. So it's quite interesting, and Aquarian is arguing that there are no downstream impacts anticipated of this proposed withdrawal, and that they need a 25-year permit to justify, if that's the right word, the millions of dollars of infrastructure improvements infrastructure that they will add to divert water to the west. So it was quite interesting, but we need between now and the public hearing to learn more about the potential impacts of this of this project, and the Harbor Commission's interest, of course, would be to protect and to the extent enhance aquatic resources in the Mill River watershed. Now, downstream of the dam of the Hemlocks Reservoir is the Cricker Brook, as you know, that flows to the Mill River, and that's identified as an impaired stream. So it's a whole other part of planning that don't have a whole lot of a background in, but I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And I know the other groups of Mill River Wetlands and Fair Plan, they've asked good questions, and so there's still that's the schedule and how the commission, what recommendations the commission may make, and how this proceeds it's still developing.
So, Jeff,
sorry
I
for
have
talking
a question.
so much, but it's quite interesting.
It's very interesting. So, at the public hearing, will it be appropriate to ask questions that were asked back last summer in sort of the opening phases of this process? I mean, will that be? Are we starting again? I guess is my question.
Well, the commission. I'm sorry to interrupt. I wish we could see each other face to face. So our questions, or the Harbor Commission's questions, were directed towards the DEEP, the agency that intends to issue this permit. Now, in the public hearing process, we need to direct our questions to the hearing officer, who says that he will use. He's not governed or he's not bound or directed by the public comments, but the public comments are to inform him of the situation and help him make a more informed decision as to whether the permit should be approved. And then the hearing officer would make a recommendation to the DEEP commissioner as to approval of the permit. But as you remember, our questions, the comments that we made, they were addressed in a document by Aquarian, and essentially saying there's no impact. And so I think we've got to think through these, a little bit more. And there's just many questions, including their original proposal, a previous proposal to withdraw water from the Norwalk River aquifer and from Wilton. And when the utility argued for that proposal, part of their argument was that would mean that they wouldn't have to withdraw as much water from the Hemlocks Reservoir system, and therefore wouldn't have to worry about meeting stream flow requirements in the Hemlock system. And now they're saying that there is no impact of the withdrawal. So it's hard to understand that argument, but they're saying that all of the flow in Cricker Brook is controlled by the dam, and that they have capacity in the reservoir to divert this amount of water without affecting the stream flow. But at times in the especially in the spring, there's overwash over the dam when there's more water than the minimum stream flow. And then we have the matter of the 2007 agreement between the town and Aquarian, which at that time Aquarian was proposing and did divert an amount of water to Ridgefield, and that led to an agreement, a written letter of agreement between the town and Aquarian that specified certain understandings intended to protect, the town's aquatic resources. So our argument was, why can't we consider using that as a precedent for having a similar agreement now, just so it's understood that the town has a special role in this, and Aquarian wasn't particularly agreeable to doing that now, and said that there was no need for it. But anyway, I'm talking about it. I don't know enough about it, but I'll try to learn as much as I can to help.
Okay. Commissioners, questions? It sure is complicated.
Yeah.
Very complicated.
But for example, one of the things that we suggested was that they consider adding or funding or supporting a stream gauging instrument in the Mill River, or replacement of one that used to be there. And their simple the utility's simple answer to that was none is needed. So from the utility's perspective, at least from what they're presenting, that there are no impacts of this. But I think at least DEEP understands that when you're proposing to withdraw 7 million gallons a day, or maybe that's just from the hemlocks and there's more elsewhere, it's hard for a layperson to think that there's not some potential impact on aquatic resources and stream flow.
Well, it certainly defies logic to think that there would be no impact.
Well, thanks for letting me go on about that. I'm trying to learn about it.
Commissioners, questions? Okay. Well, anybody who might be interested in a site visit on the 22nd or listening to the public hearing on May 4, please let me know, because those are probably pretty important events in the life of this application.
Okay, Kim. Sorry, one more thing. So that means
yep.
at the next meeting, the commission will have to consider comments to be made at the public hearing. So for the next meeting, we'll have to be more knowledgeable and have suggestions and comments and questions and recommendations, because we'll have to submit those after the April meeting.
Okay, so maybe if in the course of the next couple of weeks, if commissioners have questions, it would be appropriate for them to not wait till the meeting, but send them on to you or to me, so that we could begin to perhaps flush them out and organize them, so that we can make so that we can appear before the hearing officer and have things ready to go.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Commissioners, we'll look forward to your questions and comments on this kind of scary project. The next item of new business is the decision by the Superior Court in Susan Cohen v. the State of Connecticut DEEP. Sam and Libby were going to talk to our legislative representatives. Libby, if you want to go ahead. I did hear from Sam today, but you first.
Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I've been trying to actually speak up a few times and something was wrong, so I'm glad you have me. Sam and I have actually been, I don't really have anything to add right now. We've been bouncing back phone calls all day today. So unfortunately, and I don't think he's on this call tonight. He and I have been unable to get back and forth. I've had a conversation with my brother, John McKinney, but it hasn't gotten very far. So I will keep working with Sam and try to connect with him.
Okay. Sam told me, I spoke with him earlier this afternoon, and he told me that he was not going to be at this meeting, but he did say that he had chatted with Laura Devlin, and that she was also ready, willing, and able to kind of do whatever it is that needed to be done. So and we have. That's good. We've made inroads. We've made some progress. Jeff, is there any report that you want to make on other commissions and other in the larger world that you're aware of?
Not now. Other than that all the other commissions are considering their response to this, and there'll be a meeting soon to discuss it.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners, for Jeff or Libby about efforts to organize? Okay. Then finally, our last agenda item for this evening, related to the letter that we received from Mr. Casey about Mr. Owen's request for a mooring permit in the harbor and his assertion of littoral rights in order to get that mooring on a priority basis. I urge commissioners to look at Rule 23 in our rules and procedures, which allow a person who is aggrieved by a decision of the harbor master to write a letter to the commissioners. We have within 30 days of the date of the decision, the commission has 60 days to consider the matter, and that is Part A, which Mr. Casey cited in his letter of March 5. But I would also urge commissioners to look at the B section of that rule, the last sentence of which says, as a result, the Harbor Management Commission may not override the harbor master's mooring assignments, provided such assignments are consistent with harbor management plan and these rules and procedures. So we have two sections of our own rule which governs how we're going to and what we're going to consider this evening. So, commissioners, Mr. Casey is here to present a brief overview and any additional information that was not included in the 47 pages of materials that were attached to the agenda for today's meeting. Shall we proceed? Mr. Casey?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is John Casey. I'm a partner with the law firm of Robinson & Cole, and I represent Tom Owens and 789 Harbor Road, LLC. I won't repeat what's in my submission, except to say, this has been going on for a number of years now, and it's very clear that your rules permit a waterfront property to have a mooring. Despite this, Mr. Owens has been denied a mooring for 4 years for a number of reasons, I think none of which really, I apologize, none of them have held water. I can't avoid those analogies sometimes there. Last year and the year before, it was because there was a dock, but there's no rule that having a dock prohibits you from having a mooring. This year, the issue of the dock was not raised, but rather this issue about ownership. It's our understanding that, I just checked your town's website. There's a number of properties along the harbor, that are owned by legal entities, LLCs, trusts. I don't know how many have moorings, but in my experience, both with mooring permits as well as with land use matters in general, for example, applications to the DEEP, LLCs, they have a right to apply, but they act through a person. So in this case, this LLC is acting through Mr. Owens, who has an occupancy agreement, which is basically a lease, to use the property at 789 Harbor Road. the harbor master has asked for a lot of information about the ownership structure to prove he's the owner. Well, we'll never prove that Mr. Owens is the owner. It's owned by an LLC. That's who the deed was made out to. The LLC has an organization that is set up, and I really don't understand it all myself. I'm not a corporate lawyer, but the way an LLC or a trust is set up by the people who put it together is for a number of reasons, right? Tax reasons, ownership reasons, different interests. I don't think that really should matter to this commission or to the harbor master. I mean, the issue is, from your perspective, is there a waterfront property? Does it deserve a mooring? The answer here is yes to both of those questions. To look further to say, we need you to prove that you're the owner of this LLC when there's really no dispute over Mr. Owens' right to apply. As I said, we've submitted the occupancy agreement, which shows he has the right to use that property. No one else is claiming that they should have a mooring based on 789 Harbor Road's littoral rights. Only Mr. Owens has, as he has for the last number of years. So I question why at this point, when it's never been raised before to prove ownership, is being asked now. It just seems to be a continuation of an effort just to prevent Mr. Owens from having a mooring that will really not impact the harbor. I've been listening for your whole meeting. If you know where 789 is, it's in a little pocket outside the main channel. It's not going to impact navigation through the harbor. There's been a mooring there in the past, as I understand. It was actually at least the deed to this LLC was from a corporation. So we understand that the person who signed the deed for that corporation, Mr. Andy Hall, had a mooring in the past, and we're not aware of any requirement for him to show that he was authorized by that corporation to be the one to hold the mooring permit for the property. And I would also just say I do work for municipalities, and including advising them on freedom of information matters. And so what jumped to my mind is it really appropriate for a town when they really do not require this information to be collecting this information from property owners, to have LLC operating agreements. To be fair, you would need trust documents for any property that's owned in a trust to confirm that the person who's applying is the proper person. But even then, I question, how would you determine, why would it be up to the commission or the harbor master to determine who among a list of beneficiaries, or who among members or managers or of an LLC or shareholders, why would you want to get in the business of deciding who should have the mooring, as long as there's only one person from the property requesting the mooring? That should be your guiding principle. One mooring per property. That's what it says in your harbor management plan. As long as that is confirmed and it's otherwise a littoral property, the rights go with the property regardless of the ownership structure. So if an LLC owns it and the people who control the LLC tell you that Mr. Owens is the person who has the right to exercise the littoral rights, I think that should be sufficient for the commission and for the harbor master. And just to a point on the rule that was quoted, I didn't quote Part B because I don't really think this is a matter of it's not Captain Billings' judgment as the harbor master in terms of positioning vessels in the harbor or anything like that. This is a sort of administrative bureaucratic requirement, which I think is properly under the consideration of the entire commission as to what's appropriate. What are you going to ask of your residents, of your mooring permit holders in this situation? Are you going to make everyone disclose these financial documents in order to get a mooring permit? I understand better why you'd want someone to disclose a safe boating certificate. That makes perfect sense. It's in your jurisdiction to make sure boaters are being safe, or you're only giving permits to safe boaters. But I don't think in order to do your job, you need to know the financial dealings of every waterfront property along the harbor. As long as you're only providing one mooring per property, I think that should be sufficient. So with that, I will end, and I will say I'll obviously remain on the line and to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Commissioners, any discussion here?
Hi, Kim. It's Libby Trichler.
Libby, go ahead.
There's a lot of information to kind of comb through here, but I'm troubled by a few things, and I just kind of want to put it out there publicly. Being a realtor in real estate, LLCs are formed for privacy. They've proven who is the owner and who is on this LLC. Any other information about this LLC should not be asked by us or by anyone. I'm a little troubled that we have these letters requesting more information. And I think another thing that I just need to understand better is, for years, I guess, if they've been trying to get a mooring for years, and every year it's a different situation that is brought up as to why they can't. I'm getting concerned now that we are not, somewhere along the line, we as a committee have not been following protocol, because our rules can't change. Our rules are our rules. But if he's meeting the demands of the rules, or this LLC is meeting the demands of the rules, why is it that every single year that this LLC and Tom Owens come up to get this mooring, they're shot down, but every time it's a different reason? I haven't been a part of this commission long, so I am now reading a lot of documentation. Like I said, there's a lot here, a lot for me to learn. But I am reading and I'm feeling as though it's a different subject every year, and that concerns me.
Well, it's my understanding, Libby, and many of us have not been around for a very long time, and this is, as you know, Ed's second year on the job. But it's my understanding that this is the first year that Mr. Owens has actually filed an application. In the past, I believe that he has written a letter to former harbor masters requesting, asserting his littoral rights and requesting a mooring, but never has an application been filed. So I don't know that the rules are different. I don't know that the harbor master has ever officially made a decision about the request for a mooring. Number one. Number two, I believe that the concern about ownership was the result of our rules that say somebody has to own a littoral rights attached to a piece of property, and we're talking about property owners, not about employees of property, which it, at least in Mr. Casey's letters, he has on several occasions described Mr. Owens as the property manager. So, is a property manager an owner? I'm not sure, and I think that's the.
So I guess under the guidelines, this is the legal piece that isn't up to the harbor management, I guess. So under the guidelines of an LLC, does Tom Owens have the role and leadership as an owner? I mean, I guess that's not for us to decide.
The question is, does he have a financial interest in the property, or as Kim is saying, is he an employee, just like a gardener is, or a person with a tenant for the summer? I mean, are we going to be giving priority moorings to people who aren't owners when our harbor management plan since 1995 and our rules and procedures that supported that plan dating back for decades have said that the person that gets a priority mooring has to be an owner of the property, not a property manager, not a gardener, not a chauffeur, not a tenant, an owner. That's the question.
This is John Casey. May I speak?
Sure.
So the term manager, when it comes with an LLC, is not like a property manager, like someone who comes and make sure the water gets turned on for short-term rentals or anything like that. It's a position that helps. Actually, and I qualified earlier. I'm not a corporate lawyer, but I've been around enough to know. So a manager of an LLC controls the entity. So Tom is not just like a manager, like a property manager. He is a manager of the entity that owns the property. And as I said earlier,
is he a member of the entity that owns the property, so that he has a financial interest or is he an employee?
Well, he's not a member, but he has the occupancy agreement. He basically has
a tenancy,
a
like
lease.
you said. He's like a tenant. But the question that we're asking is whether he has a financial interest in the property as an owner, and I'm not hearing you say that he does.
Well, no individual, at the end of the day, if it's set up as Commissioner Titchler said, these are set up for privacy purposes. I mean, the organization is somewhat complex. For all intents and purposes, there's no other person besides because the LLC and the people who control the LLC have granted those rights to Tom Owens. He has those. If he had a long-term lease, would that make a difference? I don't think so. And I also want to clarify, Madam Chair, just to be clear, Tom has applied, and in my package of materials, the last page, it's a letter from 2019 from the former harbor master who said, it starts, I am in receipt of your application for a 2019 mooring permit. So this isn't the first year he's applied. He's applied since 2018. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, I mean, it can be very confusing as to who the owner is. So I would question, what's the commission going to do? What if there's 10 members of an LLC? Who decides who gets the mooring? Should it be the harbor master or the commission?
No, we only issue one mooring per house.
Right, and if the LLC,
we're not going to have, they'll have to decide who that one of those many people with a financial interest in the property who are owners.
You don't need to be a member alone to have an interest in the property. So Mr. Owen, did the LLC here
financial interest in the property?
As a point of clarification, though, and I think this is a legal matter which would probably extend beyond my capabilities and also that of the commission. The only scenario where a manager of an LLC is also the owner is in a single member LLC. Otherwise, a manager-managed LLC, there is a separation of roles where ownership has certain roles within the structure, and a manager's role is to run the business.
Right.
And if
take a look at our
owners,
rules.
And so there is, I think it would be important to have a clarification or distinction on this case if the manager who seems to be applying is the owner of the business or a manager who's running a business.
But and the LLC, the latest amendment is in your package, and so it gives Tom as the manager the right to manage the property, including its property rights.
How should we understand as commissioners the difference between this and a property owner giving the right to the mooring to his gardener? I'm trying to understand how we can not open ourselves up to be completely unfair to 70 some odd people who are waiting their turn on our waiting list to give your employee of the owner of the property an opportunity to get a town mooring in front of 70 people who are waiting their turn. That's what I'm trying to understand. How is that different than any other employee?
It's
a caretaker or a summer tenant? I just don't understand the difference.
So it's Libby. Hi. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hello?
Go ahead, Libby.
Okay. So first of all, doesn't every single owner that gets a mooring have to register the boat to that mooring, correct? Am I right in that?
They have to produce Connecticut registration.
So the boat that's going to be using that mooring is registered to that mooring under that ownership of that home, correct?
Right, a person. Right. Not a home. It's a person.
Oh, it's a person. Okay. So I mean,
yeah.
This is so simplistic, and I'm sorry to sound this way, but I'm not sure attorneys would be writing letters to all of us if this was for the gardener, number one. I just have to say that. Number two, I think if Tom Owens, as the head of this LLC, if in a legal way, which I don't understand legality, is proven to be the owner of this LLC, if he has a boat and is granted a mooring, I don't think this commission really has to worry about whether it's going to go to a gardener or someone else, or whether it's going to change every year with tenancy. It's going to be one person,
LLC,
one boat.
I agree with you. I think we're all in agreement. If he owns the LLC, I think we all are in agreement.
Well, I guess this is, Doug, a question I would ask is, for some reason, and I think it's probably important in this case to refer to him as the manager and not assume any other roles or anything else. For some reason, the manager role has been separated from ownership for whatever the structure of the purposes are. The moorings are assigned to people, not LLCs, at least as I understand the rules. In this case, is the manager of the property a leaseholder or an owner? Because it is potentially an entirely different scenario if we have a leaseholder of a property applying for a mooring, who could be a manager role or something too, versus an owner of a property applying for a mooring.
So this is John Casey. To be belts and suspenders, Tom Owens was granted an occupancy right by the LLC, so it was clear that he is the one, and there's a copy of it in the package of materials. He is the one, the sole person with the right to use that property.
You said like a tenant in your earlier remarks?
Yeah, I was going to say the right to use that property. Is there a term to that right?
No, it says on occasion, I believe, is the language. It's pretty vague. And other people also have that right if he's not occupying it, I believe is how it reads.
Yeah, Kim, this is Ted. I'm on that page, and I could read that for the committee, that paragraph, although I could not interpret it because I'm not capable of interpreting things that pertain to legal matters. But anyway, paragraph number 1 says occupancy in bold. Occupant is hereby permitted to use and occupy the residence on occasion for as long as the owner owns the residence. At any time occupant is not using the residence, owner may allow other persons to occupy the residence on occasion. The residence shall be used so as to comply with all applicable state, county, and municipal laws and ordinances. Occupant may not assign the right to use the residence to any other person. Again, I'm not an attorney. I could not interpret this from a legal point of view. But as you pointed out, Kim, it does say that not only do you have the occupant, but other people can occupy the residence as well, on occasion.
Right. Right.
But I can tell the commission that no other occupancy rights have been granted.
But this allows it.
It allows it, but we're not asking for multiple moorings. We're asking for Tom as the primary occupant of the property to have the mooring. It just allows other people.
Also indicate that the owner of the property cannot lease the mooring or let other people who aren't the owner of the property use the mooring if we were to issue the mooring to the owner.
We're not intending to do that.
This is an important question about whether he actually is an owner or he has some tenancy rights.
He's the manager, so he has an interest in the LLC and managing it and its properties and its assets, including this property. And he has an occupancy agreement that gives him the right to use the property as well. I mean, he's not. I'm just
for clarification. When you say an interest in the LLC, you don't mean a membership interest.
Not a membership interest, but he's a manager. He has fiduciary interest as a manager. He can't waste the property or do anything to cause it harm or to undermine the asset. He has to, he has a duty to make sure the property is upheld and, kept up and maintained. So we're not talking about we're not offering, to. I don't know what the concern is. This isn't going to be a boat rental location. It's clearly in the application materials. The boat is registered to Tom Owens. It's his boat. He's had it for a number of years. So we're not talking about someone else's boat. It's his boat. He's the manager of the LLC and the person with the right to occupy the property. I don't, I guess there's different ways to get at this, but I think that should be sufficient, that we're not undermining anyone else's right. To a certain extent, you're treating a property that happens to be held by an LLC, making them jump through more hoops than if this was owned by an individual. I mean, it is a littoral right. It still attaches to the property, regardless of the fact of whether it's owned by an LLC or a natural person.
Right. I think that at least this commissioner's view is that if the person who is applying had a financial interest, was a member with membership units in the entity, then it would be no question, and the others agreed that that's the person who was going to be designated to receive the priority mooring. I don't think there's any question. That's not the facts in this case, though.
I think, this is Libby again. I think that this is really important that we're going through all these steps, because we really have to determine, as a realtor here, I mean, Andy Hall was my client. His properties were both in an LLC. His mooring and his dock and everything else was in an LLC. I can tell you that Andy Hall could only live in one of the houses. He could not live in both. So being owned by an LLC and getting a mooring as an LLC, we need to define this, because there are 6, 7, or 8 people along the harbor who all have their houses for privacy purposes in an LLC.
Kim, this is Jeff.
Yes, go ahead.
Would you mind if I made some comments?
Oh, please.
And I don't mean to belabor the discussion, because maybe this is something that needs to be continued for next month. But my thoughts for what they're worth, and I don't understand the property ownership, and that was never, in my opinion, something that either I understood or thought was as significant as the questions about balancing public and private rights in the harbor. And so the property owner has, of course, the important littoral rights for access to public waters. And I don't know that we've ever accepted the premise that every property owner, that right guarantees a mooring and a dock at every property. But the property owner clearly has those significant rights that are recognized and need to be protected. But the state also has important rights, because the state owns the water and the underwater lands and holds the water in trust for the general public. And of course that means the public has important rights to to utilize the harbor. And the Commission's role, as we've always thought it to be, is to use its decisions to balance those rights in a fair way. So the harbor master, he's responsible not just to the property owner for, but also for the public's interest in all of this. And the policy that we established in the plan 25 years ago was one dock and or mooring for each property. And that's interpreted different ways now, but we wrote it 25 years ago, and it was meant to, as I'm saying, that there would be a decision. Not all properties are suitable for having a dock and a mooring. And look at the properties upstream of the Pequot Yacht Club. The residents up there don't have moorings. Would they argue that we have a littoral right to a dock and a mooring, so we need to have a mooring in the harbor? And then you'd end up with a private harbor. And we're asking the Corps of Engineers to dredge the channel, but because we're saying that the harbor is open to all. So I think we have a responsibility to the people on the waiting list. And if the harbor master determines that in a particular piece of property that access to the harbor is provided by an existing dock structure, then I think it would be in the purview of the harbor master to say, to protect the public's rights, that the littoral rights have been exercised, and I'm not going to eliminate the opportunity for a member of the private rights have been exercised. I'm not going to eliminate an opportunity for a member of the public to get a mooring. I think that the issues that I'm most interested in, other than the ownership, are this balancing of public and private rights, and not accepting the premise that a littoral right guarantees a dock and mooring in every instance. I just bring that up for the Commission to consider when making a decision on this matter. And as Kim said, the Commission doesn't have the authority to overturn a decision of the harbor master. The harbor master is a state official. This isn't an appeals process, because you can't. It's not an appeal because the Commission can't overturn the decision. It's an effort to try to resolve the matter through a cooperative way. But the harbor master still has the final say.
If I may,
well, Jeff,
John Casey again.
This is Kim. I agree with you, Jeff, that the issue here, while it's very confusing about to lay people who is the property owner that is referred to in our rules, I think that the bigger question is when the whoever it is that owns the property at that Harbor Road address applies for a mooring, the question is, do they have reasonable access to the water? And there's a beautiful dock right there. And in fact, Mr. Owens told Mr. Schuler that he kept his boat there at least one summer. So the question is not, does Mr. Owens are we denying access to the water? He's got a boat, and he's been using the harbor and enjoying the harbor, presumably, since he told that to Mr. Schuler in 2019, 2018. So we have 70 people on the waiting list. Mr. Owens has access to the harbor. He's got a beautiful spot in the harbor, and so we have 70 other people who would like to have a mooring so that they have a turn to enjoy the harbor as well. And the plan says dock and or mooring, and DEEP has confirmed that in their opinion, littoral rights are dock and or mooring, not dock and mooring. So that's the ownership issue. It's very confusing. I'm not sure that that any of us as lay people will have enough of the information that we need to make an informed decision. But I think certainly on the issue of dock and or mooring, we have the information and we have precedent, and that's what our rules say.
Agree.
If I may, Madam Chair, it's John Casey again. As Mr. Stedman points out, your rules have not changed, yet this property had a dock and a mooring for a number of years. But now, due to the change in the owner, you're applying a different rule and coming up with a different result. I would say that's patently unfair. As to the question one of your other members said about the ownership interest, if there was just a single share interest, Mr. Owens does have an interest in the trust that is a member of the LLC. So this is what Libby, sorry to be so informal, but what she pointed out, people set up these financial entities for privacy. But I'll say here, so Mr. Owens has a financial interest in the trust that is a member of the LLC. So does that satisfy the ownership interest? And then, on the issue of the dock versus the mooring, and the dock and the mooring, that this year that was not brought up as an issue, and it was brought up in the past. Your rules say what they say. Based on those rules, this property had a mooring as well as a dock in the past. And what I've told is actually the dock was longer in the past and was actually shortened during a renovation a few years back. I think it was prior to this LLC's ownership. So when it comes to access, my thought is this: you spend money on a waterfront piece of property because it provides you with additional rights that other people don't have. I understand your concern for the public in general, but the public in general doesn't have littoral rights, where someone who pays a premium for waterfront property, and I pointed this out in one of my letters, the difference in the cost per square footage in terms of assessment on this property versus one across the street is I think it's fivefold or more. So that's what you're getting. You're not taking anything away from the public by not giving them a mooring. That's just part of the process. You are taking away something from a littoral property owner when you don't recognize their littoral rights, which I will say includes both a dock and a mooring. They have exclusive rights.
We can agree to disagree on that point, because I think that the definition of the littoral rights as outlined in our plan and in our rules say dock and or mooring. So it does not say dock and mooring, period. So, the question of access is based on that definition. And Mr. Owens has been accessing the water, Southport Harbor, and enjoying, having his boat at a dock for a number of years, I assume.
He put the boat on the dock in 2019 when he was denied a mooring, is my understanding. It might have been there in 2018. The property was only purchased in 2018.
He told Mr. Schuler that he had, in February of 2019, he told Mr. Schuler that he had his boat on the dock for the past summer. So
I think that's the case, because they bought it. The LLC bought it in October of 2017. He was denied a mooring permit in 2018, so he had no other option but keep it on the dock.
And the people on the waiting list have no option at all.
Kim, excuse me, it's Libby again.
Go Libby.
All these years that Tom Owens under this LLC has applied for a mooring, where was he put on the wait list during those times?
I've never seen his name on the wait list, but I don't know. I don't believe he's.
So
I think that this year was the first time that Ed put him on the wait list. But I'm not certain.
Is that so? So when you apply for a mooring and you don't get one, I think I'd like to look into that a little bit, as well as all the rest of this. I mean, I guess where I become very uncomfortable is that here is somebody who's been applying for a mooring on a property they believe they have the rights to, and trying to get a mooring, and now we're hearing that he's never been on a wait list, and if he's put on a wait list now, he's at the bottom of a wait list. He can join the bottom of a wait list behind 70 other people. clearly, if he's been working on this since 2019, I would say, he's moved up quite a bit from being number 70th on the wait list. I don't know how many people have fallen off since then. I don't know how many people have received moorings since then. But I am particularly concerned with this one situation because it has legality to it, which I don't think it makes us look good on the commission, to be honest with you. It doesn't make us look good here in Southport. I mean, we are an incredible neighborhood with some incredible home ownership, and we should really respect our homeowners in this area. And I think that we need to get our heads together and really find a way to make this work, not only the proper way for the Harbor Commission, but a way for Tom Owens to be respected after years and years and years of trying to solve this matter and absolutely getting nowhere. Because every time, from me reading these documents, again, when we hang up, I'm really going to read them again, but it's a different reason every time as to why he was denied. And that makes me unsettled. I don't like that. Now, I listened to what Jeff had to say, and that was the first understanding that I've had, even throughout all this paperwork. But, again, that was not something that was told to Tom Owens 3 years ago. So I'm struggling.
Well, I don't know what was told to Tom Owens 3 years ago, or why he's not on the wait list. Ed's been on the job for 2 years, and I'm not sure that we have any written record of conversations between Mr. Owens and Mr. Schuler, other than what Mr. Casey has provided us with. So
I understand that. I'm just saying that I think we need to all take that into account, and we need to respect that there's a lot that we're all new to this. Ed is only 2 years new. You're new. I'm new. There are a lot of new people that aren't privy to what's happened in the past. But I think it's our job to really get a better understanding and see how we can accommodate this situation the best we know how for both parties.
Kim, this is Ted. I just want to address one thing, because if you look at page number 47 of the packet that was sent to us, which is the letter from Mr. Schuler to Mr. Owens, dated March 26, 2019, the second paragraph implies that Mr. Owens did not comply with the terms of the permit application, and that's why he was not put on the waiting list. That seems very clear to me in Mr. Schuler's letter. So I don't think there was any bias or any prejudice against Mr. Owens. I think from Mr. Schuler's letter, Mr. Owens simply didn't comply with the terms that were required to be put on that waiting list. And we can't have integrity of our waiting list and our process if we allow people to get on the waiting list who are not complying with the requirements.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what it said. That's what it seems to say. I agree.
I'll note that was for the 2018 year, it appears, where that letter begins by saying he's in receipt of his application for the 2019 year. So there might have been a misunderstanding in 2018 where Tom didn't follow up with the application. But it's clear at the start of the letter for 2019 that Mr. Schuler had his application for that
year.
But
Mr. Schuler, on if you read further on that March 26, 2019 letter, is saying he needs to have a waiting list application with the required fee, and this would be for the 2019 year. And the second point is, and it's really no different than what Jeff is saying, an explanation of why you're requesting a mooring when it appears that the existing dock at 789 Harbor Road property provides reasonable access to the harbor. So, in terms of Mr. Schuler's response to Mr. Owens, he's asking for money, and why when Mr. Owens has a dock, he wants a mooring. So that seems to me to be fairly consistent with at least some of what we're saying tonight.
And Kim, this is Jeff again. I'm sorry for interrupting, but just in response to Libby's comments, and those are all good comments, but you have the submittal from the applicant, who's of course pursuing his or her self-interest. But there's another side as well, and I think that other side, having to do with the harbor management plan and the balancing public and private rights, is something that the commissioners should also have an opportunity to consider and discuss, and that maybe that argues for continuing to have this learn about this issue between now and the next meeting, because there's no deadline to act on this at this meeting. I mean, we do have 60 days. Meeting.
Yep,
yeah.
We do have 60 days.
Kim, as I said earlier, I'm glad to be getting into these kinds of conversations so that there is a total understanding and what seems to be a more permanent plan and rule in place that really identifies. I mean, unfortunately, when Andy Hall, under his LLC, sold this property, he sold it stating to realtor, me, and a few others, and to everybody else, that he not only had a dock, but he had a mooring. So there are a lot of misconceptions in the public. There's a lot of misunderstandings because the rules aren't clear. And unfortunately, that's a very, very misguided event to have happen when I, as a realtor in Southport, am selling property where ownership had both a mooring and a dock. And now the next owner isn't granted the same access for whatever reasons. I'm not saying the reasons are wrong. I'm just saying we really need to identify and really clarify and have these rules out in the public, because there's been a lot of gray area here, clearly, from this situation that we're in right now.
Right. Right.
And as someone from the general public might argue that in opposition to thinking that you can sell or get value out of state-owned land that's open to the public, and that's been an issue with moorings and.
No, it's never that. That's not why it was stated.
Well, I'm not saying here, but in other places where advertisements for property talk about comes with a deep water sailboat mooring, but that's not something for a property owner to attach value to, because it's not the property owner's property. It's public trust land.
I wish he hadn't. But Andy Hall and his LLC are long gone, so unfortunately.
Speaking in general.
And it's hard because it's like, where does the rule lie? If one ownership was allowed to have it, why isn't another ownership?
So, Commissioners, would you like to continue this discussion next meeting, or?
Sure. I think that's a good idea for people to process the information that we've gathered tonight. Helpful for us to spend some time thinking about it and reading the materials. Okay. So, Jack, are you moving to table consideration of the Owens request until our April 20th meeting? Yes, I will make that motion. Thank you. Can I have a second from Commissioners? So, Commissioners, do you wish to continue the discussion of this tonight?
Well, it may be a problem with the mute on the phones again.
Oh, no, really?
Although you can hear me.
I can hear you.
You can hear me as well?
I can hear Jack.
Okay.
So, so where do we go from here? Obviously, we need to have a better understanding. Or maybe it's just me, but I think we need a better understanding. And maybe tonight we've done enough, if that's how you feel. But I do believe that this is a situation that needs to be resolved as we are headed into that term of the year. where boats are coming out on the water and people are being granted moorings, and this home may have an opportunity to have one of them or may not, but that has yet to be determined. So what steps, Kim, can we take to come to terms with the understanding of how we're going to proceed here?
Well, we have, at the moment, we have a motion that's been proposed to table the Owens request until the next further consideration of the Owens request until the next meeting. So I think that if I could have a second for that, then we can discuss.
I guess that was my concern. You weren't getting a second, so that's why I interjected and said.
Yeah.
See, that's, I don't know if we need to have I don't know if we need to kind of go offline at some point before the next meeting and have a conversation again just on this subject only, and get a better understanding as to where this ruling is going to fall. I don't know, but
I mean,
where are we going to get?
At the end of the day, it's the harbor master's decision. Our role is just to evaluate the letter from council, but it's really the harbor master's, the state official's decision.
Okay, so I would imagine then after he's been a part of this call, correct?
Yep, he's been listening.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm sure then he can make a ruling as to how he feels. What is another meeting going to take? I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make. We're talking about tabling it. Where are we going the next month?
Well, I think that what we would do is
misunderstandings, or we need to be on the same page about how we understand our current rules and
correct. So then
how
can
they
we
get
have
applied. And I think that's what we need to talk more about.
Right, and it may only be me that needs to understand it, but that's what I'm saying to you. Is there a way that we can have some kind of an informal meeting amongst us to, I don't know.
No.
Okay, we cannot have a quorum. A quorum would require an agenda, et cetera.
Okay. No, it wouldn't be a vote on anything anyway, though, because as we said, the harbor master has.
But if you have majority members, it's a quorum and it's a public meeting.
Okay,
and
got
a public meeting has to be public. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Offline meetings can be are not appropriate either. If you bump into a commissioner and happen to be chatting about something, that happens. But you can't do public business privately.
I understand that. Okay. I just don't know. I just don't see where we're going to get anywhere different next time we meet. So unless somebody can, I'll read through the paperwork a few times and try to get a better understanding. But as you said, it's not our decision. So.
Well, but I think it's important to understand the rules, and certainly Mr. Casey is an advocate here, and he has presented one side of the equation. Jeff has presented another viewpoint. We have our own rules that certainly commissioners could take a look at in their entirety. We have the harbor plan. I'm sure that time and perhaps some thoughtful consideration of all of the issues. And all of the things that folks have said some commissioners might find that a better way to make a decision. But I leave that up to the commissioners. And we do have 60 days, so.
Kim, this is Ted. I have a question either for you or for Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff stated earlier that a decision by the harbor master is not something that the Harbor Management Commission can overturn. So is our role in this basically to take a look at the information and the argument that's been provided to us and then make a suggestion to the harbor master?
Well, I'm looking directly at Rule 23 of our Rules and Procedures, And the third sentence of the Part A says, the HMC shall review the decision, that is of the harbor master, and render a finding on the matter within 60 days of receipt of the written request. So we have to render a finding. But if and I'm not quite sure what a finding is other than an opinion.
Yes, Kim.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, and I remember when we wrote this, again, 26 years ago, and discussing the section of the plan with DEEP, and we originally had discussed acting as an appeals board over the harbor master, and DEEP was very emphatic, saying you do not have authority to overturn a harbor master's decision. You can hear a complaint, you can make a finding, a recommendation, or an opinion, but the ultimate decision is with the harbor master, because the harbor master is a state official, and the stationing of vessels is based on the granting of mooring permits is based on the harbor master's authority and the general statutes to station all vessels. I mean, I think if we could confirm that very easily with DEEP now. The harbor master reports to the Commissioner of Environmental Energy and Environmental Protection now.
Right, and the Part B says that the harbor master exercises his duties in a manner consistent with the harbor management plan. Town ordinances, rules, and procedures cannot alter harbor master duties and powers. As a result, the HMC may not override the harbor master's mooring assignments, provided such assignments are consistent with the harbor management plan and rules and procedures.
Well, that's a funny language in there that we should think about, because it implies that you could if it's not consistent with the rules and procedures, and that's not correct under the state statutes or the DEP's function as administrator of the public trust.
So we can render a finding, but there's nowhere does it say in our rules, and what Jeff is saying based on Connecticut statute is that we don't have the authority to change the harbor master's decision.
Now, not to take my word for it, but we can certainly get a clarifying statement from DEEP about that.
So that leads me to question number 2, which is the harbor master's decision was based on the issue of ownership. As the attorney pointed out, he did not mention in that decision the dock or the mooring.
Right.
So it seems to me that if we're presenting a finding and ultimately the decision is the harbor master's, we need to confine our debate to the issue of ownership.
And Ted,
the issue of the dock or mooring is a separate issue. I understand where Libby's coming from, that we need to resolve this and be able to very coherently state what our position is on this. But it seems to me that that's outside of the purview of what we're being asked to review this time.
And Ted, can I just confirm with respect to the question about ownership while counsel is still on the phone? What I heard him say, this is the first time we're hearing this, is that there is a trust that owns the LLC, that's an owner of the LLC and a member, and that trust has one of the persons who has a financial interest in that trust is the applicant that he's representing. Mr. Owens, and I just want to confirm that's what I heard, and that's the new information that we had never been provided before. Is that correct, sir?
Oh, this is John Casey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep,
yes. Now we can hear you.
Yes, I'm going to confirm what was said, and I'll also repeat that we took an appeal of the harbor master's administrative decision about requiring additional ownership material, not necessarily a decision in his powers as harbor master.
Or in a decision by the harbor master to not issue a mooring permit. The harbor master hasn't made that decision yet. The harbor master has asked for additional information.
Hello, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Sorry, Hugh. I think that was good. I mean, for that now, we're just at the first step here. We wanted to get this to the commission, show you what the building looks like in general.
Hello?
Talk about the process. We had 2 hearings on the South Yard Assembly Building. This isn't as complex a project, but we sort of put out there that...
So, Mr. Casey, if that's you speaking, could you please mute while you're on another phone call?
Hear this proposal and hold a hearing, at a special meeting, then we would...
So Ted, are you... You're suggesting that we should make a decision about ownership here?
No, I'm just suggesting that what Libby suggested we get into is really beyond the purview of what we're reviewing at this point. That's a separate issue that should be discussed under a separate agenda item. I think we're making this a bigger discussion and broadening the discussion beyond what we should be focusing in on at this point. And the harbor master basically decided not to take further action at this point because of the ownership issue. So I think that's what we're being asked to I forget the words that you used, Kim, but...
render a finding.
Render a finding on.
Okay.
And then, for example, if we were to render a finding that we think ownership is not relevant in this case, then I think you go on to the next issue, which is the dock and the mooring issue. I see those as being 2 separate issues because of what we're being asked to render a finding on.
I agree, Ted, and I also think that the proper order was to deal with the ownership question as an initial question. If you don't survive that question, then there's no reason to discuss the dock issue again. But if the ownership issue is satisfied to the harbor master's satisfaction, then I think that we do go back to the other issue. We now move ahead to this other question. And that's a harbor master's judgment.
So, commissioners, are you prepared to render a finding on the question of ownership?
Okay, hearing none,
This is Ted speaking again, Kim, and I will just say that I do not feel prepared. I do not feel that I have the any bit of legal expertise in that area to render a finding. So I would hope that perhaps one or more of us could have probably one of us, given meeting rules, could have a discussion with the town attorney basically to get his input and take on that and whether that's a relevant issue in this case.
Other commissioners?
And we do have more information than we had before tonight on that question, so that's additional data for us.
Okay. So then do we want to table the question of ownership until our next meeting?
Yes.
If we're not prepared to render a decision, render a finding this evening, then it seems to me that only other option that we have is to table this until our April 20 meeting. And to do that, we would need a motion to table it.
Am I allowed to make a motion, Kim, to table it till the next meeting?
I wish I could say yes, Libby, but we have a quorum. So.
Okay. I thought so, but I wanted to ask anyway.
No, well, thank you for asking.
So I will make a motion that we table the question about ownership by the applicant of 789 Harbor Road until our April HMC meeting.
Okay. And do we have a second?
Kim, this is Ted. I will second that.
Great, Ted. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. So on April 20, we will continue this conversation. Any other new business? Anyone wants to bring up? Okay, that being the case, I need a motion to adjourn.
This is Jack. I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Jack. Second?
It's Ted. I will second that motion.
Thank you, Ted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so our meeting...
Aye.
Thanks, Eric. Our meeting at 6:52 is adjourned until April 20th.
Thank you so much. It was a
Thank you.
discussion.
Stay safe.
Yeah. Everybody be well. Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.